Hi, everyone that just joined. I'm going to give it one more minute just to make sure that everybody that wants to join us tonight is here.
Participants now. Where do you see that? Bottom.
You say chat there with the little red dot.
All right, I am not seeing anybody else in the waiting room, so I'm going to turn it right on over to Mayor Polderman for welcome remarks.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 5th Village of Lytton Community Meeting. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I'd like to recognize the Lytton area Kakumshin and then Klapmek peoples, where our efforts to safely return are centered. It has now been 267 days since the wildfire. The response and the recovery process hasn't been easy, but I'm pleased by the work being done by community staff, residents, business agencies, organizations, other levels of government, and the neighboring communities. We're taking important steps towards recovery. Thank you to everyone for coming together to support our community. As always, tonight, you'll receive updates from staff and partners on the key initiatives taking place in Lytton, but I'll quickly highlight some of the good news. We want to offer a last call for residents to sift their properties and complete the rate of entry permits for debris removal. Person to contact is Owen Collins. We've hired a recovery housing project manager, Jack Kehoe, to lead the recovery housing file. Right now, we have an experienced team of personnel working on recovery and rebuild of the village. But as they are contractors, they will need to be replaced at some point in the near future. We're looking to hire a new CAO, CFO, and corporate officer. This will require time for hiring and transition. And we ask for your patience while this is occurring. More information will be provided soon. In funding news, on March 7th, the province announced that they'll be committing a further $18.4 million for the recovery of Lytton. This funding will cover the substantial costs of debris removal, archaeological work, and soil remediation for the municipality and all uninsured and underinsured properties in the village. I'm incredibly thankful for the support from our provincial partners. To wrap up, I just want to thank the volunteers, residents, staff, who continue to support the Resiliency Centre and offer a welcoming space for area residents to connect with one another and access valuable resources and supports. Thank you all again for being here with us for this community meeting. We'll do our best to answer the questions you have today. Now I'd like to introduce our parliamentary secretaries, Jennifer Rice and Rolly Russell, to provide an update.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jennifer Rice, Parliamentary Secretary for Emergency Preparedness, and I'm joined by Rolly Russell, Parliamentary Secretary for Rural Development. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the territory of the Coast Tsimshian people here in Prince Rupert. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again tonight. This month, as the Mayor outlined, we're making significant progress towards Lytton's recovery. We've provided an additional $18.4 million in new provincial funding to support the rebuilding of Lytton. This funding will cover the substantial costs of debris removal, archaeological work, and soil remediation for all uninsured and underinsured properties in the village. With debris removal now complete on municipal properties, planning is underway for the remaining residential properties. We are also coordinating and funding the costs for archaeological work. The last step to this important work is site remediation. Soil remediation will remove any contaminants from the ground and restore the landscape into a safe site for the village and residents to rebuild on. To get this work done as quickly and efficiently as possible, we are also funding a work site with temporary housing for up to 30 staff, consultants, and construction workers who are doing this work on the ground. This new work and funding are a major milestone on the path to rebuilding Lytton. Clearly, there's lots of work ahead, and we're backing the community to get this done and get it done right. This funding removes barriers for both residents and the village of Lytton, who have been facing significant and mounting costs. Thank you, and I'll now pass it on to Parliamentary Secretary Russell.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm happy to join you tonight to hear the community update, as well as to celebrate the good news for Lytton, as Mayor Polderman highlighted earlier. I have the honor to join you tonight from the Southern Interior in Grand Forks on the traditional territory of the Tsuut'ina-speaking people. And so happy to be here, thank you. We certainly know it's been an incredibly difficult road for people, and we know you're all eager to get home and rebuild as quickly as possible. That's why we're stepping in to help ensure everyone can move forward together, whether you're insured, uninsured, or underinsured, meaning your insurance may not be covering everything required for rebuilding. The stress of disasters is enormous, as we all know, and this is just one way we're trying to help reduce that anxiety for you. This work, debris removal, archaeological work, and soil remediation, is important because it will help ensure that it's safe for you to rebuild. This is important for us because this is work that would otherwise need to be funded by each of you as individual homeowners. And given the extreme challenges Lytton has faced, we know how important it is to provide supports like this. And as Lytton is an area of cultural and heritage importance, we need to be careful and respectful. This work will help identify and preserve any findings in the area and will further our reconciliation and collaborative resource management with the Ntlaka'pamux Nation. And I hope this announcement will reassure you that the province is genuinely here to support you with action to help reduce the burdens that you're carrying. Together, we certainly are making progress. We look forward to moving into this next stage of recovery that will bring us closer to getting shovels in the ground and pounding nails in walls. As at past town hall meetings, I've been clear about my gratitude and our gratitude for the community and local government teams that are helping support this recovery. That gratitude still stands, but I want to take a moment tonight to thank the many provincial staff that are taking a role in this recovery. Working together will be key in our success moving forward. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Parliamentary Secretary Rice and Parliamentary Secretary Russell. I'll now pass it over to Constituency Manager Brittany Lang for an update on behalf of MP Brad Biss.
Thanks, Jasmine. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of MP Biss, I would like to thank the Village of Lytton for hosting this town hall meeting. MP Biss sends his regrets for not being able to speak with you tonight. Votes have been called and he's in the House of Commons late tonight as we speak. It's been quite a week in Parliament. On Tuesday, MP Biss had the opportunity to question the Minister of Housing directly in the House of Commons on affordability and continues to engage him on housing supports for Lytton. Firstly, MP Biss would just like to say he's sorry the province has taken so long to get funding out the door to Lytton. The latest announcement of 18.4 million to commence debris removal, while very welcome, should not have taken 8 months to arrive. MP Biss is happy to see Lytton First Nation well on their way with modular homes being assembled in short order. And he continues to push the Minister of Housing on specific assistance to Lytton to build purpose-built housing. Particularly, MP Biss is focused on supports through the Rapid Housing Initiative, which the Minister's office alluded to being reopened after the federal budget, which we expect to be tabled in early April. To say getting reliable postal services to Lytton is a struggle is an understatement. We've spoken with senior officials at Canada Post, and I'm happy to hear this week that 2 of the 3 full-time hires have started at the temporary post office, which will allow for consistent operations. If there are any unforeseen closures, Canada Post agreed to share the information with the Village of Lytton Communications, as well as our office and the Resiliency Centre, to get the word out as much as possible. Earlier this month, our staff team visited the Resiliency Centre. We dropped off some feedback cards, info to resources, Canadian flags and pins. Our office continues to remain open should you require assistance with reestablishing any ID lost in the fire, like passports or immigration documents. And we're available to help should you run into any issues with CRA with filing your taxes this year. NPVIS is in regular contact with Emergency Preparedness Minister Bill Blair on the status of Lytton, and he shares our concerns about the pace of recovery and actively works with his counterpart, BC Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth, on expediting any bureaucratic processes that may stand in the way, along with approvals for funding. This week, NPVIS spoke with the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, Dominic LeBlanc, on the need for climate resilient infrastructure to build sustainably for the future. And he's also written to Minister LeBlanc on the Lytton Fire Hall. It's unacceptable that Lytton still doesn't have a fire hall ready to go so building can commence safely. Not to take away from the amazing work the BC Wildfire Service does, and we are thankful the Lytton Fire Department is allowed to operate out of their base, but we know this isn't a sustainable solution. Efforts to reestablish Lytton's fire hall should be among the top of the list of priorities. Lastly, we just want to say thank you to everyone working hard to restore the community. We know we need collaboration from all levels of government and community leaders for this to be a success, and your dedication to rebuilding the town does not go unnoticed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brittany. So, hello everyone. If we haven't met in a past community meeting or other meeting, my name is Jasmine Patrick, and I'll be helping moderate the community meeting again today. So on to the next slide here. Just want to give you a really quick glance at the agenda so you know what to expect over the next couple hours. So in a second, I'll run through some Zoom housekeeping items and some Zoom tools, just like I normally do. And then staff will provide a number of updates on recovery and rebuild initiatives, like you can see here. And then after all of the updates, we're going to open up the session to all of your questions. And I received a number in advance, so we'll go through those as well. And finally, at the end, we'll close off with some final remarks and we'll provide you with the date of the next meeting. There are a few rules for participation today. Number one is you should be aware that the meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on the Village of Lytton website. We ask that you be respectful in your tone and with the use of the chat box and of the time by keeping your questions direct and to the point and allowing others to speak. Please use appropriate language today. Refrain from using profanities or abusive language. Negative comments toward any individuals won't be tolerated, and anyone using abusive language will be removed from the session. Finally, if any media are in the meeting, you're very welcome to be here. However, we do ask that you hold any questions and email them to communication@lytton.ca for response after the meeting. So on to our Zoom instructions here. First, at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a chat button. If you click on the chat button, it'll pop up on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can use the chat function today to send us your questions. At the end of the meeting, like I mentioned, there's going to be an opportunity for you to ask all of your questions out loud. So to do that, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. And you can find that by clicking on reactions at the bottom of your screen and then clicking raise hand. And if you're joining us using a landline telephone or a telephone of any kind today, you can still participate. It's just a little bit different. So you want to use *6 to mute and unmute yourself once we ask you to. So *6, and then *9 to raise your hand. So we'll put that in the chat for you in just 1 second here as a reminder. If you run into any issues at any point throughout this meeting, so any technical issues, please email communication@lytton.ca and we'll do our best to sort of help you out and try to get you back into the meeting. All right, that is it for the introduction remarks. So we are going to move on to the update section of the meeting. So the first section up is safe return and re-entry. And the first person I will turn it over to is Ron Dickinson for an update on building bylaw.
Thank you, Jasmine. Yes, and hello, everybody. It's nice to be here tonight. I'm actually in the Silix territory in the Okanagan, where I'm sitting in my home talking to you. So there's a number of things. The safe return is a huge topic, but I'm just going to brush over a few little things that have come up that people are a little concerned about and confused maybe, or need a little bit of depth of understanding. So first thing is variances. And it's got another phrase that people banty around about with it, which is grandfathering. And grandfathering is really, begin with, it's not going to apply very much in the area of the rebuild, because grandfathering usually refers to things that have been built and exist in spite of any new rules or things that have changed. Well, most of that effect has been removed by the fire, unfortunately. But so grandfathering isn't going to be a big issue for anyone, but variances will be, because variances are about how you use your land, where you can put your house on your land, where you can put other things on your land, and what types of things you can put on your land. And there's a number of situations where the rules, it's called the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw has been in place for several years in Lytton. It hasn't changed. And there's may be some changes, but very minor ones. So it's pretty much the same set of rules that have always been in place in Lytton for years. But in every case, always, there's a reason for wanting to be a little closer to your front yard setback, or a little closer to your back, or various other variances you might want, a height variance or some other thing. If that comes up, there's a process, and it involves just going to the city hall. Now, granted, that's a bit difficult at the moment, but we're going to have one here pretty quick. So going to the city hall or contacting any one of us through the contact information and initiating a request for a variance, which is then processed by staff, and mayor and council will sit down and discuss, debate, and come to an understanding about how they feel about the variance, and allow whatever variance you may be asking for in most cases. So it's a process. It's a common process all over BC, and it happens on a regular basis. So it gives you a little bit of comfort, I guess, in thinking about all the rules and regulations, to think that if you see one piece that is really worrisome, we'd be glad to talk to you about whether it could be varied and how to do that. So the other thing that's come up that has been, questions have come up at many meetings. So I thought we might want to talk about the mobile homes, modular homes, homes moving into the community of during the rebuild process. And the issue really is around what is a mobile home, what's a modular home, and can they be put into the community? And there's three residential type zonings in Lytton, and we're really just going to talk about one of them, which is, its title is R1, but it's the one that applies to almost every property in the area where the fire damage occurred. And mobile homes are what you traditionally think of as the type that are go down the road on a set of wheels, and they're towed by a truck into a site, and totally complete. And there's single wides, double wides, and in the R1 area, there's no provision to put a single wide mobile home in that area, with the exception of a couple of lots that are zoned R2. But for the most part, almost everyone's lot is R1, and a single wide mobile home wouldn't be allowed, and hasn't been for years. The other type of mobile or movable building it's called a modular building. And it's built like a building that you would see going up on the street anywhere, with 2x4s, 2x6s, gyprock. It's more a typical building, except it's made in a way that can be moved down a highway, and usually in 2 or more pieces that are bolted or pounded together on the site. And those can be moved onto any lot. as can a mobile home that's double wide. So I expect there's still some questions about this, and I look forward to hearing them later, but without getting into too much more detail, that's the short story on mobile homes, modular homes, and how they can fit into the fire damaged area in Lytton. Jasmine, I think that's the end of my presentation, and so maybe you can pass it on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ron. I'm going to pass it over to James next, and he will speak to debris removal and funding. We've got an introduction, and then James, if you want to run right into critical infrastructure and your update there, that would be great.
Yep, sure, Jasmine. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here again today. I was in Lytton today. It was a beautiful day. It was really great to be there and see people. I'm calling to you from my parents' house in Lillooet, home of the unceded territory of the Statliam Nation. Talking about debris removal, well, there was a bit of a pause this week, as we had sort of mentioned to folks who were listening in, while we got some of the right of entry permits in place. We are going to be authorizing 10 additional properties south of First Street, which is in fact an avenue. And we're going to get mobilized next week on that, which is great news. And so again, similar to the mayor's point, if folks within the community can start sending in those right of entry permits, we're going to start moving into what we're calling Zone 2, which would be the properties south of 2nd Avenue, as soon as we get through the surface debris on First Ave, which we're referring to as Zone 1. And we'll just work through the community from south to north by street, essentially, or by avenue. So that's great news. We did formally sign the contract with MatCon to take over as prime contractor in the village. So you might see a little bit of movement of some of the fencing and some of the sort of security protocols in place, which again, we've been sort of noting. So call out to people to get in and let us know, primarily through Owen still, but there will be some health and safety changes as this is now going to be deemed a construction site and fall under WorkSafe BC requirements for MatCon as our prime consultant. So more language and some procedures will come out and be put on the website and be messaged out to the community. But I think they'll be typical to what people have used to been seeing and what would be typical on any construction site in the province. We were approved through council last night to move forward with a contract with our archaeological service provider. So you'll probably start seeing monitors on the ground by early to mid next week. They've been great up to this point at being on site when we've needed them, even without the contract in place. So now we've got the formal relationship and that'll continue. This gives us the opportunity to start doing some of the soil sampling. We'll focus again in Zone 1. So that would be under, now that we've removed the surface debris, we need to do the subsurface sampling. We've been held up on that until we had the archaeology piece in place, and we have formally signed on to the archaeological permit, which has been put in place through the province and signed on to by EMBC. So that was the last major contract that we had targeted to get in place to really move forward full force with the surface debris and remediation of the town site. So what we're really doing now is going to be moving through it systematically from south to north. I think I'd mentioned to folks before, but there's a couple reasons for that. One is that the prevailing winds obviously are south to north, but also we want to create an access corridor down to Hobo Hollow prior to the spring freshet. And so we're really targeting getting that portion of the properties cleaned up as a first push, and then we'll continue to work from there. I think that's it from a debris removal piece. There may be some questions folks are seeing, you know, some of the metal and piles of debris pulled off of those municipal properties and onto the streets. We don't have a great staging area for some of that debris as we pull it off. So it's really being moved out until there's enough debris to be picked up by a dump truck and be moved off site. So until we've got enough properties cleaned up that we can identify a nice central staging area for some of that, we will continue to probably just pull it into the street as we move forward. And once we get enough material, we'll load it up and take it off site. We're not really looking to have a huge staging area that like has the entire community sitting in a pile, but it'll still need to be logical to keep the cost down and the efficiency around hauling off site. Moving on to critical infrastructure. Again, We continue to try and provide potable water to the residents in Lytton as a first priority, and so meeting Interior Health's obligations around testing and reporting on that. Thanks to Rod and the Public Works crew of making sure that continues to happen, but also Interior Health and First Nations Health Authority when it comes to the wells in the community. Also, getting some of the reporting in for our requirements around the wastewater treatment plant right now, and making sure that continues to operate as required. BC Hydro has initiated the cleanup of their materials now, so you may see them starting to come to site. They've completed the testing, their requirements, and they're going to start mobilizing to remove all the chopped up poles and the wires of theirs and Telus' cables that are distributed around the site. And then they've also been on site to start working through the design side of their business. We also, the village did receive a BC tax grant prior to the fire. Some upgrades to the SCADA system around the water and wastewater, as well as some other upgrades to the water system, which we are now looking into with Mundell Engineering to try and get that scope of work moving forward as planned prior to the fire. And then also we're looking to apply on a building infrastructure grant with ISIP, which is investing in community infrastructure program through the federal government for continued upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant. And then, I mean, from rebuilding some of the areas of downtown that were damaged during the fire, we're still trying to uncover some of the curb stops. We actually got a good look at some of them today as we start to remove some debris. And, you know, I think some folks have realized that a lot of it's in really good shape. There certainly is some that we're going to have to do. And then there was just some historical areas where they were paved over or curbs were put over them. And we're going to try and expose those and make them right as we move through the community. So I think the plan that we've been continuing to message is taking shape. And I don't see any major roadblocks or hurdles other than time and lots of labor over the next few months as we get through it.
Great, thank you, James.
You're welcome.
The next section will be essential services. So first on the list, I'll pass it over to CAO Gru to give us an update on the Resiliency Centre.
Thank you, Jasmine. So I'm calling to you tonight from the territory of the Tecumseh-Secwepemc. So I'd like to first thank Christy Palmatier from EMBC, who's been working on this file for us, keeping in touch with the Resiliency Centre. Denise O'Connor and her volunteer team of doing a great job. The organizations currently in there are Community Features Sun Country, Aboriginal Skills Education and Training, DPS, Red Cross, and then today the Chinese Museum received funding to assist the rebuild. A check presentation happened for $50,000. Salvation Army is providing a 14-passenger bus, which will be ready to roll out early or late May for local transportation. Next Wednesday, March 30th, mark on your calendar. Those who would like to get a free haircut, trims, there will be a crew coming out from the Lower Mainland area. There also will be a techno day on March 30th, which means that a service will be provided to anyone who has questions about their cell phones, devices or laptops, such as downloading apps, understanding programs, helping with glitches, etc. There will be a psychological first aid training to be offered in Ashcroft the 1st and 2nd week of May. So make sure you get in on that. And I believe Noni McCann and a group, our local community group, is organizing a barbecue and reunion on April the 2nd from 11 to 3 p.m. So you need to contact Ms. McCann on that. And that's it for the Resiliency Centre.
Great, thank you so much. I'm now going to turn it over to the Canadian Red Cross and Tammy Germain.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here this evening. I am joining you today from the Semiahmoo, Katzie, and Coquitlam First Nations. Really updates, that was great. That was great updates for the essential services. You took the words right out of my mouth. So the only other thing I have to add to that, the Red Cross is there at the Resiliency Centre this week. So they are there this week from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. If anybody has not connected with a case manager, or if they have any questions that they'd like to speak to somebody in person, you may not get the case manager that you're working with, but they can absolutely direct you and have access to your files. if there's any questions or you're not feeling like you're being supported, please reach out directly. Denise O'Connor at the Resiliency Centre, she can get a hold of me right away. I'm happy to support you in trying to get the supports that you need, or even the answers that you're looking for. And we're here to listen. I didn't bring a PowerPoint presentation with me this time, so I hope everybody is okay with that. And I'm just going to pass it on to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tammy. We'll now go over to the United Way, and I believe we have Ryan here from the United Way. I know you were having a few issues, technical issues earlier, so let me know. Ryan, can you hear us? Oh, there we go.
I absolutely can. Don't mind
Perfect.
me. I tend to be technically challenged.
That's okay.
That's okay. Just give me 1 sec here. Speaking of technically challenged. Okay. So yeah, my name is Ryan Denault. I've been with the United Way. I was hired specifically two Wednesdays ago to work in emergent need, and specifically with the Lytton and Merritt communities, along with the Indigenous communities in and around both cities. So I'd like to take the opportunity tonight to introduce the High Neighbor program to everybody. I'm going to be engaging with the village of Lytton and the surrounding First Nations bands to first sit with the individuals, organizations and businesses and schools to get a sense of some of the struggles and some of the successes. In the beginning, I hope to empower the voices of the communities to develop additional resiliency strategies that can be added to the great work being done by all the other organizations in the area to date. Once those issues are identified, we're going to work with the community members to design solutions. Our local love funds will empower the residents to create projects and activities to assist in helping the communities recover. The United Way plans to roll this initiative out immediately with the goal of sustaining the program for the next 5 years. So we're not planning to be here just for the recovery of the community. We're planning to be here for the long term. It's just right now, obviously, the priority is to recover. But after that, it's to continue to build community and start to work with the community to see what they want to look like once we've been rebuilt. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thanks for being here with us.
I'll also give my contact information here for anybody that wants to get a hold of me to ask further questions about the program.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on to health services now, and I have Ian Wood from Interior Health Authority.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Today I'm calling in from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded. So just as an update as to where we're at with healthcare in Lytton to date, we are using a phased approach in trying to address some of the concerns that have been brought forward from the community to reestablish healthcare. Lytton First Nation has been gracious enough and FNHA to partner with in the Lytton First Nations Health Services building to set up some services currently. Currently, we still have home health in there weekly, home support working out of that site, public health for COVID testing and immunization clinics, as well as mental health, substance use, and opioid agonist therapy clinics 3 days a month. One of the things that we are missing in this clinic right now is primary care. Primary care is going to be introduced very shortly, I would say. We have some interest from some local physicians about to set up shop out of the Lytton First Nations building. Also looking at other sites to see if we can establish more opportunities for people to access both face-to-face as well as virtual appointments with a physician. I'm very optimistic that we can have something set up there within the next month to have at least 1 day a week with a physician, either face-to-face or virtual. So as we move forward with this, there's a few things we need to look after. There's equipment needs we need to look at. We'll be introducing an electronic medical record as well. Previously, all the medical records were paper-based. moving to an electronic medical record system does involve some training as well as some setup at the sites. So we want to make sure we're doing that appropriately and that the staff are familiar with the system. We'll be looking at spaces and what kind of space we're going to need as well. Thinking about how we're going to get that long-term plan, we'll be looking at growing in our services. So we're looking at other spaces as well outside of the LFM building. No, it's all been conversation so far, but I do believe that we should hopefully be having something by summertime in place to have a bigger area for these physicians to work. So super optimistic, honestly, about the opportunities we have right now for primary care. And we can start looking at planning towards a future model for the community and really leveraging some things we have in place, like our local health planning table for the Lytton area, to see what those needs are, and as well as some engagement with some of the First Nations communities around the area as well to see what those needs are. So we're just starting with the engagement, we're just starting with the long-term planning, and we're hopefully going to finish up this immediate need here fairly quickly so we can start moving forward.
Great, thanks so much, Ian. We also have Londi here from First Nations Health Authority. Londi?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invite to participate. Londi Rithel, I'm the Regional Manager at FNHA, Health Emergency Management. I'm from the Statlium Nation Shalath, but I live, work, and play in the Shwemic area, and a lot of my family members are from the Inuktitut Nation. So thank you, Ian, for the great introduction on what some healthcare priorities are and some of the services that Interior Health provides. So FNHA just kind of tags on to a few more of those things. In terms of that, we have specific mental health pathways, such as we definitely move through Inuktitut Health Services to provide mental health services and other healthcare priorities for those in the Lytton area. Now, I know that currently we're just waiting on additional services to open up, so we'll continue to support where we can with the Nation Health Services out of Merritt, where it's possible. FNHA Central Systems of Support, we have a mental health and wellness benefits and traditional wellness calling number that people have been utilizing on a fairly regular basis. We have Doctor of the Day for the clients. It's an FNHA site where they can access mental health supports and referrals through the Doctor of the Day. We also have the First Nations Virtual Substance Use and Psychiatry Services. Once again, you can be referred into the program through community health care professional and nurse, the health director, etc., addictions counselors. So they can definitely provide you with some direction to get some supports there. You know, when all of this happened, you know, I will say that it was certainly a surprise to everyone, and none of us expected the outcomes that definitely, you know, had ended up there. I just want to say a huge shout out to, you know, a lot of our partners, Red Cross, and especially Interior Health, you know, ESS, all those other people that have provided supports. You know, there's sometimes that, you know, there was some, you know, I want to say bumping and grinding in terms of, you know, back and forth, but at the where we need to go. And I'm happy and grateful that we don't all have the same voice, but we have the same intentions. So Cook's Jam, all my relations.
Thank you so much, Londi. I'll now pass it over to Sergeant Clay from the RCMP.
Thanks, Jasmine. From an RCMP standpoint, we continue to work on our development and our implementation of our permanent office. As I mentioned last meeting, we ran into a few little hiccups on the building we originally secured. So we've worked through that. There's a recommendation that's going to the BC Senior Management Group, I believe early next week, with our ask for our temporary offices. That'll go through its process of approval. And then once a contract is agreed upon and released, we're probably looking at 4 to 6 months before we have something on the ground. That's just based on availability of what the building suppliers have in stock right now in the area in Western Canada. So I don't anticipate us having a structure on the ground likely until sometime mid to late summer. That being said, our project team has been working on the behind the scenes stuff as it relates to our buildings. So the critical infrastructure that needs to be tied to the building, they've been working with Hydro and TELUS and the village to secure what we need for, you know, water, sewer, power, internet. And that's all looking very positive right now. So when we are able to get that building on the ground, we should be tied to the grid, so to speak, as opposed to running autonomous standalone building. We're working still with our projects team and with the village on our cleanup and demolition of our damaged properties there. So the MOU group through Public Works is putting some stuff together, and I've been told that sometime in early April we should have sort of a tentative plan to go forward to the village, I'm guessing, so that we can start working on getting that stuff cleaned up. From a staffing standpoint, we still have our remaining 3 members living in the community. Our recently appointed member who's transferring in from Manitoba was on the ground 2 weeks ago. I toured him through Lytton and the entire detachment area. Him and his family will be on the ground ready to work by the end of April. He will be living in Cache Creek, but he will be working 100% of his time out of the Lytton area. That leaves 1 position vacant that we're still actively recruiting, and we've started to make some more contacts with some of our neighboring communities and partners. I'm hoping to secure a rental house for my last position in the next coming couple of weeks. From there, we will go through the list, identify a member, and hopefully have somebody on the ground by the end of the summer, which will make Lytton fully staffed. Be nice because we weren't fully staffed before the fire, so I'm hoping as we come into the 1-year anniversary that I can return to the community with a little bit of good news that our staffing levels will be at 100%. Our calls have remained fairly constant. We're averaging 1 to 2 calls a day. We're anticipating an uptick coming into the summer months with the relaxing and releasing of COVID restrictions and the increase in travel. So BC Highway Patrol is engaged with us, and they will continue to be in the area on a regular basis to help calm traffic through Highway 1 and what's left of Highway 12. So we can hopefully minimize conflict and collisions on the highways. And that's my update, Jasmine.
Thanks, Sergeant Clay. All right, we'll now move on to our financial updates. So we'll turn it over to Terry for a reminder of the budget open house.
Thank you, Jasmine, and thank you everyone for coming again today. And I've got a few different updates relative to the financial pieces for the village. First, we have processed the Q3 and Q4 utility billings for residents, and we've also processed the adjustments to those bills in accordance with the council resolution. So all those folks who lost their homes will have no utility bill for those quarters, and those in Ponderosa and Loring will have a small deduction in those fees. So what we're going to be doing is sending out statements of account so that you can be updated with the balance of your account, including we're going to be sending out property tax statements as well, just so that everybody is very clear in terms of what we show as due from property owners as to utilities and property taxes. In regards to 2022 utilities, that's still before mayor and council as part of the financial plan and budget. That process has to be completed no later than May the 15th. So undoubtedly, I'll be updating you more in the next town hall on that. My second update is to do with the budget and financial plan. Staff met with mayor and council this week relative to a workshop, pardon me. And then on March the 31st, I invite you all to attend the Zoom budget public input. And it's going to be from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and it'll be on Zoom. And I think, Jasmine, there'll be a link on the website for that. And we'll be posting some budget documents to provide some more detailed information for you so you can develop your questions. And I think the last thing on my agenda is just an update on donation receipts. We're here in the middle of tax time. So if you or any of your family, friends have donated funds to the village and are looking for the tax receipt and you haven't received it, please reach out to finance@lytton.ca and we're more than happy to get you that receipt so that you can deduct it on your tax return. And that's my update for this town hall. Thank you, Jasmine.
Great, thanks so much, Terry. So we'll move over to the local government section now. So I'm going to pass it right on over to CAO Grew again.
Thank you, Jasmine. So in terms of establishment of a municipal hall, the recovery team is in the process of reviewing 2 options for a facility with council chambers and municipal hall. This would be a combination, so stay tuned to that. Myself, Mr. Matuzzi, and Mr. Hay will be in Lytton on the ground tomorrow to be looking at sites and chatting with the mayor. We'll probably stop in at the Resiliency Centre and say hi to folks. We have the by-election coming tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock. Your nomination papers have to be handed in. Then it closes. The advanced voting will be April 20th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Cumsheen School. General voting is April 30th, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Cumsheen School. Mail-in ballots, you can request your mail-in ballot starting April the 4th by emailing elections@lytton.ca. And that's my update for that piece.
Great, thank you so much. So that is the end of all of our updates, actually. So we can jump right on into questions. Just to give you a reminder of how to do that, you can either put your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand by clicking reactions and then raise hand, and then you can ask them out loud. So I'm gonna go just to my document. There's a number of folks that sent some earlier, so I'll start there. Okay, so the first question we received is about the proposed bylaw 711. So over 200 comments were made, and will they be made public? If so, when and how?
Yeah, the comments have been almost all the comments that we've got emails, we've got voice mails, we've got all sorts of other comments. We've put them into a document that we are going to sit down with. I'm going to sit down and a number of staff, we're going to sit down with Mayor and Council and go over all those comments. So not only have we all already heard most of them once or twice in different meetings, but now they're on paper, they're written down, and the considerations to be given to them. As far as having them available to the public, there's no reason why not. They're all public comments, but I think probably that won't happen until after we've had an opportunity to sit down with council and go through them.
Great, thanks, Ron. The next question, I believe, is for James, and it's, why does archaeological monitoring need to be done during the removal of metals and ash?
Yeah, it's a good question. So by law, legally, there does not have a requirement for heritage monitoring during the surface works. There definitely has been a request to respect the heritage of the Nakapan people, and through the process that's been established by the Cumsheen Heritage Committee, it's a best practice that's recommended and requested of everybody. The village certainly is willing to take that recommendation and with respect. And so because we as a village will be doing the majority of the cleanup, and also through the province have offered to take on the archaeological and monitoring aspect of the insurance corporations, we are very happy to have monitoring on site full time, whether we're doing surface or removals of subsurface debris. So I hope that's enough for you. It certainly is, I think a lot of it is a nod and respect to our neighbors and the request to have that monitoring in place while we do any work within the village.
Thanks, James. I have a number of questions related to the right of entry permits. So I'm not sure if that's you or Ron potentially, but I'll start at the top here. So can we get more information on the entry permit that people are being asked to sign, in particular with respect to those who are insured, but maybe underinsured? So number one, has an agreement been made with the insurance companies that the cleanup will be done with the village's contractor rather than the insurance company's contractor? That's the first one.
Yeah, I can take that. No, there have been no agreements made with the insurance industry regarding the actual execution of what the underinsured is going to look like and how we're going to work through that. I and others on the recovery team are working directly with the representative, JS Held, to try and establish some high-level terms of what that might look like prior to bringing recommendations forward to the village and the province. And vice versa, JS Held is bringing some of those back, trying to collectively get the insurance industry on board with a plan prior to, messaging out what that might look like. So I think we're close. It's hopefully within the next week or two, that plan will be in place. So the short answer, which you probably weren't looking for, is no, we don't have an agreement in place at this point in time.
Great. Here is another question related to costs. So will the province or village cover costs or all costs related to debris removal that are over and above insurance policy limits, only if the right of only if the right of entry form is submitted? So you spoke to that a little bit, but if you want to expand it on.
Yeah, I mean, the intent of the underinsured is to make sure that there's no risk or liability left on private property by the time the village is remediated, whether it's insured or uninsured. So the intent is that. No, I guess we won't. The right of entry permit really is being asked of for private residents to give acknowledgement to the people who are going to come onto your private property to do the work. That's the short point of the permit. There are other mechanisms that council can direct us to enter onto private property to do that work. That's certainly not the preferred first choice of getting permission to enter onto private property. So the right of entry permit, I know it seems challenging for some, but it's very simple. It's providing us with your authorization to enter onto that land. So in the event that your underinsured portion of work is going to be executed by the village, we've got assent to go and do that work ahead of time. If we have to wait to the last minute to get private residents to give us permission to enter onto their land, then very likely it's going to delay the project. And so it's really, again, I think it's a tool to respectfully ask permission to enter onto your land to do the work that we would like to do in the event that it won't be covered under insurance. I would say council can certainly direct us through bylaws, and I think through the state of local emergency, we probably could take that task on without the right of entry permit. So that, to the question, it will not stop us from doing it, but it's certainly the first tool and mechanism to allow us to do it.
Great, thanks, James. And one more sort of on the topic is, will the property owner be part of the cleanup process in that they will be allowed to give instructions on the cleanup of property and what to salvage? Example, stone walls on property.
Yeah, I think so, to some degree, obviously within reason, but yeah, respect. The stone walls are amazing. There's a heritage component to that we want to be respectful of. Lilacs, other identifying features of your property and the history of Lytton. So through coordination with me, I would hope that we can address that early, similar to the right of entry permit, and not at the last minute while we're trying to do the work. So if there are places or properties that people value and they want to get that on paper or identify it through some mechanism between Owen and I, we certainly want to, respect that and your properties as much as possible while we mitigate the risk.
Thanks, James. I'll give you a break here for a few minutes. And I will jump over to local government. So CAO grew. I believe a number of these are for you. So a number of questions about village office location, which you just provided an update on. So that's great. There are a few questions about Aspen Planers. So has an agreement been signed yet with Aspen Planers for the use of the mill office as a village office? If not, why not?
So we have a couple of options. Aspen Planer is one of the options, and we're working through the logistics of that.
Great. Follow up to that, can current staff in the local area work out of the Resiliency Centre while awaiting semi-permanent office space? So Red Cross residents, Elections Canada are already coexisting in the KSS school space. So this could be a temporary measure as they await the office space.
If the person asking the question is referring to the two staff that live in Boston Bar that are currently working out of Boston Bar, I don't believe that there would be a space within that area that they would be able to work that would give them privacy to do the job that they need to do. We also are cognizant of the fact that they have to get through the Jackass Mountain area, which potentially could be a couple, 3-4 hours a day for them to travel. So the productivity time for them is actually better served in the where they're working currently in the Boston Bar office.
Great. There was a follow-up. So you mentioned there's a number of options or a couple of options outside of Aspen Planers. Can you provide insight on what the other option is?
Not at this time.
Okay. Another question for you. Why is the posting for the new CAO position advertised as working remotely? So number one, why is that? Who made the decision? And what's the rationale for not making living in Lytton a requirement for the position?
So once we have an office and a living space, so accommodation for the new CAO, they would definitely be required to live in in Lytton. But at this point in time, we would like to be recruiting. My position or my commitment to the village ends April 30th. So we're trying to get people in place, a person in place prior to that, which means that they would need to work remotely at this time.
Thanks. Another question on the same topic. Is it possible to find out how much the CAO position pays? Notably because they're wondering if it is competitive, and if the salary isn't competitive, could there be a motion in council to increase the salary?
The salary we're posting is competitive.
Great. And you already answered the second follow-up there about permanent location in Lytton, so that's perfect. Question about the ATCO trailer. So are the ATCO trailer film crew committed as of today to a donation amount for the Village of Lytton? And if so, is that in-kind donation of a village office?
I will defer that to Mayor Polderman.
What was that?
The ATCO trailer, they want to know if it's a donation and if they've committed to paying anything.
ATCO Trailers has committed to paying the village to shoot the commercial in Lytton to the tune of $50,000.
Great, thank you so much. Question for our elected officials, so Councillor Gray, Ian Hay, Mayor, and then a number of staff, so James, Ron, and Leslie. Will you all be available to attend the April 2nd barbecue?
I've already responded to Ms. McCann on that.
Maybe we can just put in the chat if there's anything else there, but just noted. Great. I will jump over to a question about gift cards. So Terry, this might be for you. Could some of the gift cards be considered for use supporting travel expenses for Lytton residents who lost their primary residence to make the trip to the event, which I believe the event is the barbecue I just referred to?
The gift cards are before Mayor and Council and the CAC committee. I'm not sure the next meeting date of that committee, but the decision in terms of how to distribute them is before them, and it's not a staff decision.
Great. Maybe that can be referred to them as a note. Maybe I will jump back up to safe return and re-entry. So James, this might be you. There's a few questions about temporary housing. So number one, has a funding proposal been submitted for temporary housing?
No, we don't have the data or understand the business case on what the housing is going to be yet. So we have not submitted a funding request for temporary housing.
Thanks. In determining whether there is a need for temporary housing for displaced village residents, are the renters being contacted as well? In particular, there are a number of LFN members who were living in the village and do not have access to a computer who need housing. So how would we also communicate to them? So how are we contacting renters and then also folks who may not have internet?
Yeah, from what I understand through the process, we've been trying to gather information about A, first landowners, which is certainly easier because there's a lot of public information about it, and then B, the renters and people affected. There's certainly coordination going on with NNTC and LFN about residents who were renters who were members of LFN or with broader Nakuppam community. Absolutely. With the support of EMBC, the original survey that they sent out certainly didn't provide the data that we were hoping. They are continuing to refine the documents about who is in need and also trying to figure out who is already being accommodated through the temporary housing that's being put in at LFN and the request through NNTC. So there's certainly an acknowledgement that there are people still needing support outside of those individuals. And so really the strategy has been on our side is to flesh out the rest of the data, but also to bring on Jack Keogh as our housing development manager to really have a focused full-time support person to work with the agencies, including the Red Cross and NNTC, LFN, EMBC, to move this mandate forward more quickly. So I think now that we've got Jack on board and with a history of developing community projects such as these, we will have further movement on the interim housing portion of the work, similar to what we've done with the other scopes of work that we're trying to accomplish.
Great, thanks, James.
I can add something to that.
Sure.
So to segue into a comment I was going to make at the end is that we're asking people to have residents please contact Jack Keogh at housing@lytton.ca to express your intentions as to whether you need interim housing, and that will help us build our business case to submit to the province for funding. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Debbie, I see your hand is raised. I'll ask you to unmute now.
Yes, hello.
Hi there.
Yeah, it's Debbie's partner, Rob here.
Hi,
Rob Hanna here from Lytton.
Great, sounds good. Please feel free to ask your question.
And, you know, one of the things I was always, I guess, wondering, you know, in other words, we're going on 9 months now. And the question is, if there was a hazardous, toxic materials, why did it take so long to go as far as we've gotten today with the famous Lytton winds? The blue fence, ironically, is not going to keep those toxic, hazardous, airborne particles just with the blue fence. Why did it take so long? A blue fence with ragweed surrounding it is not going to keep in toxic, hazardous materials because of the famous Lytton winds.
Great, thank you for your question. James, is that something maybe you can speak to?
Yeah, I can speak to it for sure. And thanks. I think there's an acknowledgement there has been all the way along that it'd been nice if the debris removal could have moved faster. There certainly is, materials within the town site that are hazardous to human health. WorkSafe BC considers any burn structure to have to be considered to have asbestos-containing materials. And then some of the testing that we're doing is showing that there are some of the materials actually on the site, not just from a policy point of view. Should they have been picked up off the ground within days of doing so? Yeah, probably, but there was no mechanism to do it. So, I mean, I think We've all acknowledged that it would have been nice to have done it sooner. Do we have an answer for how we could have done that earlier at this point? I don't think we do. I think it's certainly an acknowledgement that we've heard a lot, and we're trying to move forward to get it done now that we've got the contracts and the funding and the project plan in place to do so, and hoping that we can expedite it from this point forward.
Great, thanks, James. I'm just going to ask a question, another question we received earlier, which is about critical infrastructure. So what is the plan for the village green lampposts and yellow street signs during the cleanup phases? Will they be left up? Will they be reused? Will they be disposed of? And then a supplemental question is, if they are being disposed of, would the village consider allowing them to be given to or purchased by folks in the area?
I can take the first part of that. I don't have an answer to it. I know that it was categorized during the urban systems classification of infrastructure that could survive or needed to be replaced. I could go look at that for you. I think the question might have come from Denise. So I think it's a great question. I will find out what our assessment of that is, if they're remaining or if they're leaving, and then maybe Mayor and Council can talk to if they need to be removed, if there could be a process in place for residents to acquire those or donate them.
Great, thank you. There is a question about what support is in place for repairing infrastructure, water, sewer, hydro for TNRD residents. So maybe that's just a question as to who they contact at the TNRD to get that information. Okay, I will find out what the contact is there, and I will put it in the chat for everybody. Noni, I see your hand is up. I will ask you to unmute now.
Thank you. James, I'm a person who likes to walk, and I like to walk from the west side to the town side, and I'd really love to be able to walk to the post office without going to the ferry. And I'm wondering if there's any way that we will be able to walk through town, maybe have a pass set aside or something for people to be able to be, I know we need to be safe. I know that's a big issue for everyone. But at the same time, I'm wondering about, you know, some way down Fraser Street that we could maybe open the hole in the fence again, or just look at options and consider options as you're opening things up, to say, you know, maybe we could find a walkway for people that's a safe way to get through town, or a time when you could do this, or anything at all would be really appreciated, because I know there's a lot of us that really miss being able to get to where we're going on our feet and being forced to drive through town all the time, especially now that the weather's better. So my question is just if someone would please put that on the list to address and do what we can to help people be able to get through town without having the security guys pick us up and give us hell.
Yeah, understood, Noni. I think there right now, because we're focusing our contractor on that end of town, there's going to be some challenges probably from again, a work safe point of view and just pure safety as they start to get in there with excavators. Yeah. The goal is certainly to, like, by May 31st is the date that we're trying to do it. They believe if all process works, we should be through there quicker than that. And then that blue fence can move. And I think we can create some process for that. Again, just walking through the town site is great, as long as there's no public risk to yourself and those others who want to get into town and do your business.
Yeah,
so
well, we don't get into town. We just want to kind of get through town.
Yeah, understood. So I hear your question, and we'll certainly work you know, to try and create that corridor as soon as possible and message out how that might look and work with our contractor to make sure that it's safe for everybody.
I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Noni. And thanks, James. I do see a question for Ian Wood. Ian, are you still on the call? Oh, yeah, there you are. Perfect. So can you please speak to the local health planning table for Lytton? What is the purpose of this table? Who's on the table? And can other members join this planning table?
Good question, Denise. So the local health planning tables are unique to some communities, and Lytton is one of those communities that we've developed this with in collaboration with the Division of Family Practice and FNHA. The purpose of this meeting is to get together and talk about what healthcare looks like in the community, what kind of gaps we're seeing, and what we can do collaboratively to address some of those gaps together. The work is done in a collaborative fashion, and we meet about, I think it's 4 times a year. I don't know off the top of my head. We do have a lot of them in the portfolio. So the purpose is pretty much looking at the healthcare in the community and what we can do to improve or enhance. Individuals on there, I did pull up a list. So we have Inca Nation technical reps and health leads, health directors. We also have Inca chiefs from the local bands, FNHA representatives. We have representatives from the Rural and Remote Division of Family Practice, Interior Health, Mayor and Council. We will have the Ministry of Health will come in and chat and sit down with us once in a while as well. Ministry of Children and Families, BC Ambulance, RCMP will have ad hoc depending on what the agenda has in place. So we'll invite people to come and speak, to provide information, to answer some questions that came up from previous meetings. And as well as other organizations within the ministry, we'll invite them to there as well. As far as people that can join, this is as we grow and as we get the word out that we do have these local health planning tables in the communities, we are going through to see what that membership looks like, who should be on these meetings, and how we're communicating these meetings and the minutes out into the community as well. So that's something I would say, if you're interested, it's safe to shoot me an email at ian.wood@interiorhealth.ca, and I'll put that into the chat box as well. And we'll go through the process about including membership. Yeah, so far it's been a great table, and new to me as I came into this portfolio, but has been quite effective in building some really strong relationships with the community.
Great, thank you so much, Ian. All right, my next question is potentially for James. Who made the decision to cut down the existing electrical poles unaffected by the fire?
I can't answer. It was prior to my time, but I believe it was BC Hydro who came in and executed that work on their own.
Great. And then this is probably another BC Hydro question, and unfortunately they're not here today, but just in case you have insight, James. Why will it take 9 months to do the hydro for the village of Lytton when 35 kilometers-ish up the valley took a month to complete post-fire?
We're chatting with the BC Hydro design folks and the folks responsible for the work. There's quite a bit of design work to do. Lytton previously had obviously put in poles and added transformers as the village grew, sort of holistically. We call it like for like, but to figure out where the transformers need to go, where the guide wires need to go to support poles and wires, where we can even put the poles, given the adjacencies of some of the buildings to the site and properties now. All of those engineering factors need to be worked through before they can mobilize to site and do the work. So I think anybody who's done construction realizes that there's a very large engineering component or archaeology component, design component prior to doing most of these institutional grade buildings. So I know there's definitely pressure from BC Hydro to make this a priority and move it as quick as possible, but there is a real design requirement prior to just mobilizing in site and doing it. The last thing we want is for BC Hydro to come in there and install something and have it wrong and have to do rework or take longer than what we require, or not be able to provide adequate services to the community at the end of the day. So I think it's a real expectation of us onto them to do that design work and get it right and get it approved by the village before they proceed with the work.
Great, thank you. The next question is probably for you as well. Is the archaeology MOU, so Memorandum of Understanding, $5 million for the next 6 months only? What is the plan if excavation and soil work take longer than this period?
Not familiar with the MOU that's being referred to, or the reference $5 million, so I can't comment on it.
Okay, maybe if whoever sent this question in advance, if you'd want to put a little bit more detail in the chat, that would be great. The next question is, can the Village of Lytton have contractors removing the already stacked cement, wire, metal, and wood piles in the village while waiting for the bigger picture to take shape?
That might be further to my note earlier where we do have to stage some materials because there really is an adequate laydown area for the contractor in the village. There's no really big areas where we can haul that to and stage it while we're waiting to get enough material to put in and load. And obviously having dump trucks wait there over days is not cost efficient, or take half loads to the landfill also isn't efficient. So certainly recognizing that it's an eyesore, but trying to move forward with the most efficient way possible to get that debris out of the village.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Noni, I see your hand is raised again. I'll ask you to unmute now.
Thank you. Tonight, I haven't heard anything about a community planning process. And I had previously on earlier meetings heard reference from James and from Ron Matuzzi that this is something that the village would be engaging in the springtime or as we move towards summer. So I'm wondering where we're at with that, if there's a timeline, if there's something that has to happen first. Just maybe clarify it for us and give us some information about what we can look forward to as far as community input into a community planning process.
I can answer that, Jasmine. Yeah, we're poised and ready to go. I think what we'd like to do is also meet with our neighbors and First Nations. Obviously, some kind of joint planning process with Lytton First Nation, the broader community as well is important to us. But that's something that has to happen between the two parties. The village obviously shares more than just infrastructure, but there's an awful lot of reasons why working together on a common village vision is really important. So hopefully we can get started on that discussion.
There was no answer to that question, was there?
No answer.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Nani, what did I miss in the answer?
Well, you didn't say, you said you're going to talk with the First Nations. Now, am I understanding what you're saying to be that you must have engagement with the First Nations people before you can start any kind of broader community planning? Therefore, you can't set a date or say when this might happen, because you didn't say when this might happen. You only said that we got to talk with the First Nations people.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I said.
Okay.
So I would like, and I think everyone would like, to be able to work jointly with our neighbors. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
And that process has to begin. Under the law, the village can, of course, do an official community plan and then refer the plan out to our neighbors and ask for comment after 60 days. We just don't think that that's a suitable or an appropriate way to move forward.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And now I have a better understanding of why it takes so long. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ron. The next question that I have here is potentially for the CAO. Have you considered having the staff come to the Lytton Resiliency Centre once a week for residents who may have questions?
At this time, we haven't, but actually yesterday, Sam Walters was at the Resiliency Centre to assist our Chief Elections Officer in accepting nomination packages. We will have her there as well in April. So we are actually slowly looking at that, yes.
Thank you so much. This is more of a comment, but I just want to make sure I acknowledge it. So just listening to James speak about the entry permit, it may be easier to have a one-page document to fill out as opposed to the 8-page document, as it's been quite confusing with legal jargon. So maybe just something to take back and consider.
Yeah, and an acknowledgement, for sure it is. You know, when we were trying to figure out how to execute this and get permission to go onto properties, this was something that was being already developed, and for the sake of getting it moving, you know, we use this form. I think if people are concerned about it, If they don't want to release private information about their insurance policies, or if they have other legal concerns that those are well-founded, what we're asking for is acknowledgement that we can enter onto the property. And so if you choose to leave some of that information blank on the form, it's the one mechanism that we do have, and the capacity to go out and change that process right now probably isn't realistic. So again, I think we need to stick with what we've got. Feel free to just disclose what you want to, or leave areas blank, but certainly if you could use that process for now to give us that permission to enter your property, it would be appreciated.
Jasmine, thanks, James. I think James, nailed it. Remember, this process has evolved. When this started, there was no support even for the uninsured. And I think the province, through the Red Cross, stepped in and said, no, we'll create a process for the uninsured. That then morphed to a process for the underinsured. And so that particular form was developed by the TNRD, who were the first out of the gate to develop it. We use the form, but we absolutely concur with everyone that it's a very long form, but and things are evolving some more. So I think the most important thing we have is in fact the right of entry. We could sort out the rest later, but the right of entry is the most important, because the village needs to be cleaned up, and that's why the province has invested so much money, so that in fact we don't have any part of the village that isn't clean, so that we could begin to move forward.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, James. The next question, just want to make sure I'm getting them all from every section. So the evacuation alert recently rescinded for Ponderosa, Loring Way, and the high school. Is this evacuation order the only emergency order in place? Has there been discussion with Mayor and Council regarding rescinding this order, whereas a designated work site controlled by MacCon trumps other control mechanisms and liabilities anyway? So will the Village of Lytton give access to residents in stages as the village is remediated from south to north?
So at this time, the state of local emergency will stay on for the village site itself. The evacuation alert on those 3 areas was rescinded this past week. And currently in discussions with Mayor and Council until the safety concerns have been alleviated with MacCon coming on board, then that'll be a new discussion with Mayor and Council as to whether the SOL would be removed.
Great, thank you. When it comes to the village office, so the mill site or the mill office is ready to go. Staff did travel to Lytton prior to the office. So will the group, out of all of the options you're considering, will you be considering the one that's available the earliest?
That's correct. It's from a municipal recovery program process. It's our high priority right now to get a village office open because we do have 2 staff members that could travel in from Bostonboro.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next question here is, how is the village applying the standards of the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People today, so recovery and rebuild, and into the future? So how will we advance reconciliation and relationships with the Naquackma?
So at this time, we are currently, I in particular do have weekly conversations with Nadine Hoying from NMTC, and I have reached out to Michelle, the administrator from LFN. We are also looking at organizing a community forum or government to government, whichever people are used to title. So we are working through that process, yes.
Thank you so much. The next question is about the CAC committee. So 3 members have resigned, as this person understands, due to concerns not being heard. So is there another way for residents and community members to provide these concerns to Mayor and Council? I guess, what is the other option if not through the CAC committee?
It would be direct contact through either myself or email to Mayor and Council.
I think the role of the CAC was to allow citizens, we requested to have a committee or something where citizens could provide input, and that was the idea. And I think the idea of the CAC is where we could take things like zoning bylaws or building bylaws, bring in the expertise, and the building bylaw was a good example. We had a number of different experts from the actual BC government building standards branch right through to Ron Dickinson to look at it and to share information. But clearly that's not the only way to get information. That was a group, and that information was made public. People could attend the meetings, people could listen in. But if somebody wants to write a letter and say, please don't include bylaw 711 in the building bylaw or 750, they always have that option of doing it. And so I think the role of the CAC was really to provide a more in-depth review for those that wanted to either be on the committee or at least to listen.
You also have the option to ask by writing letter, email, to be a delegation at the council meeting.
Great, thank you both. So we got a little bit more information about that 5 million question. So their understanding is that almost 5 million was put aside for 6 months of work. With AEW, what happens if time runs out before the work is done? Does that provide any more insight for you or James to answer that?
Yeah, that certainly does. If the time gets extended, then there would be a scope increase or schedule increase to the AEW's contract, and we would give them a prorated fee increase that would correspond to the additional time that we require them to work on site with us. It would be executed through a standard change order to the contract.
Perfect, thank you, James. Denise, I see your hand is up. I will ask you to unmute now.
Yes, thank you. This question might be for Leslie, I'm not sure. Following, I think, Noni's question about the First Nation. In this meeting and in other meetings, I hear lots of talk about collaboration with LFN and NNTC, but I'm just thinking in our village, it's really the village of 5 or 6 First Nations around the area. Why is it that the others aren't included in that collaboration, consultation, whatever? Why is it just NNTC and LFN? Thank you.
Well, they actually all are. So I apologize for not mentioning Scapa, Siska, Boothroyd, and the others. Kanakabar, the mayor, is in contact with Chief Michelle on a regular basis. So we are doing that. Do we do it on a daily basis? No, we don't, but yes. And again, we're the key thing to understand and remember is that we are building relationships at this point.
Thank you so much, Leslie. The next question I have on my list. There's a question about expanding on permanent delegation. Could you please explain? Was that relating to asking to be a delegate? Maybe Jessica, if you want to just explain in the comments a little bit more on what you mean by that. But I think the intent was you can request to be a delegate on the council agenda. So we'll wait for that one. So if anybody does have any more questions, please send those in the chat or raise your hand. I think I have one more to go through. So what is the rationale for not allowing access to the parish hall house, and the post office? 2 electrical poles and the curb stop turned on is all it would take. The elementary school pipes have been tested and are functional. So why can we not access the parish hall house, and the post office? James, I'm not sure if you know the answer to that one.
Just to say that right now they're in the state of local emergency, and we haven't been authorizing access to any properties within the village. So they're right in the heart of some of the work that we're doing, part of the construction site that we referred to earlier. So at this point, we haven't been allowing access to any properties within the village of Lytton, including the parish hall. And it's understandable, they are standing, thankfully. But right now, I don't think there's a rationale from a safety point of view to be allowing people to be working around the construction site or within the state of local emergency.
Thanks, James. Just want to see your hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I thought I heard Leslie say that you can always apply to be a permanent delegation, and I wasn't sure if I heard it incorrectly, but I didn't understand it, and that's why I was asking for clarification.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
Leslie, do you want to expand?
I didn't, maybe I was mumbling, who knows, but that's not what I said. So you can apply to be a delegate at the council meeting if you would like to be heard directly by council.
Thank you. All right. We have the next question here, which might be very specific for you, James, right now, but maybe we could take this back if it is too specific. But could you explain number 17 in the right of entry permit in a more understandable way?
I can. It's a standard release of liability, generally put into contracts, and indemnification of the parties who are going to be doing work on behalf of the owners. It really is intended to protect the people who are coming in to do the work, the debris cleanup or the danger tree removal on the property. That is the intent of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. There is another question here. I contacted the Merritt Rotary this morning regarding potential funds from the Heller High Water Telethon for those of us impacted by the Lytton wildfire that live outside of village boundaries. So they told this person that all funds for the Lytton area are being sent to the village for distribution. So may I ask how, or if the village intends to ensure those of us outside of the village of Lytton boundaries also receive the funds, as it appears the funds are for the Lytton area and not just for the village. Not sure, maybe Terry or CAO?
I could answer that. So the discussion actually took place at the council meeting last night, and council has asked staff to reach out to the Merritt Rotary because it would actually be less onerous on the municipal staff from a finance perspective if the Merritt Rotary was the one that would distribute the funding.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Just while I see your hand is up again, I'll ask you to unmute.
Thank you. I started to type it, but I think I can read it. So I just want to ask, following Noni's comment and Denise's, that it's good the village is interacting with our surrounding First Nations community, but doesn't the village recognize a need to interact with the residents in the community as well? There is a strong desire for more interaction and some conversation where we can anticipate the direction the village is going, because information seems to be thrust upon us, and there's no long-term vision that we are comforted by. So I think originally when we saw the comment that First Fraser Basin was going to come in, and then we've talked about other groups facilitating community discussion, we talked about community residents and the extended community as a whole having some interface where they can dream and create a longer term vision. So there's an end to this situation that we're in. That's you know, a big question, but there's a hunger for interaction. And as much as it's great that you're interacting with First Nations, citizens want that also. Thank you.
So the recovery team has been talking about how we could actually put some sort of a platform out where there could be interaction, whether it be we realize that not everybody can be on Facebook or the website. So we're just working through how we can do that. Actually, Patsy Gessie brought up a site that's down the United States. I'm just trying to remember the name of it, but I did write it down and I have looked into it. And so we are looking at that. It'll take some funding to put that together. The second piece is we're working with our communications, Yvonne, to create a paper newsletter that can go into the post office for people that don't have internet or cell phone, where they can at least find out what we're up to, then have an avenue for them to be able to correspond with us. And that's the other reason why it's a high priority to establish an office in the village of Lytton, so that the residents that are there can come in and chat with the staff and just, you know, pick up brochures if we've got them, or just, yeah, just have a conversation with our staff so that you can feel that the community is getting back on its feet.
Certainly that's the intent. That's the intention. I mean, when we talk about discussing with our neighbors in a couple of people, the LFN, all the areas, we mean all the areas, including you, Jessica, on the other side, you know, in the regional district and other people. We understand that the village is more than the people that live in the administrative boundary of the village, that there's lots of people. And so when we talk about planning, that is the intent. You know, it's a difficult process because a number of people aren't in Lytton. In fact, they're all over the place, and we've seen just trying to get a handle on questions around interim housing. It's been difficult. Not everybody's on the internet. You know, it seems that word of mouth is sometimes the best means of reaching people, and I thank members of the community who've done that. But you know, when you try to put together a visioning process or public engagement, it's going to be very challenging. I see Parliamentary Secretary Russell, and at least in Grand Forks, people were there and could come back. And when we had that public engagement, we could go to a hall and they were all there and everyone could hear and see the same plans. This is really difficult. So it's not a lack of intention. It's important that we get everyone, but it's also the vehicle that we use to create that vision is going to be difficult, but necessary. So it provides a real challenge just to be able to do that because so many of the residents aren't there. So that's the part.
You'll also see a bit of a change now that COVID, where you don't have to mask up, and that's actually opening up, because we tend to forget in this situation with Lytton that COVID's actually been, you know, it's not an excuse, but it's definitely been hanging over, where you can't have your, you know, collective meetings and stuff like that. So now that that's opening up, this is great.
Thank you both. And this, not a question here, but I just want to make sure I read it out loud. So folks are just saying it would be nice to have a venue where the public could attend council meetings in person again. And then also we could use a variety of methods such as focus groups, Zoom meetings, town hall meetings, and different types of cafes. So just to take back. Mm-hmm. All right, the next, oh, sorry.
I just noticed somebody posting, and I was thinking about that when Mr. Matuzzi was speaking. Him and I have also met with Scott Hildebrand, the CAO of the TNRD. So yes, we are in conversation with the regional district as well. And we chatted briefly with Steve Rice last night because we bumped into him. So there is conversations also with the TNRD, yes.
Great, thank you so much. Next question is, will residents be participatory in an after action review of the Lytton Creek fire and subsequent events? When would or should an after action process occur?
So I think that would be in the council and the provincial government's mandate, and I'm sure that that'll be part of the medium to long-term planning process.
Perfect, thank you. There was a request to expand, and this maybe you might want to take it back, but can you expand on the answer to my question related to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the exact actions?
Not at this time.
We'll take that one back. No worries. Thank you. Right. I see, Jessica, you have your hand up again. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
I apologize. I think that was just a mistake. Thank you.
Okay, legacy hand. No worries.
Okay.
Perfect. Sorry, let me just scroll and make sure I'm catching everything. If folks have any more questions, please put those in the chat. I see one has just come in. Has the TNRD been included in the recovery plans and process of Lytton as a whole? The fire didn't stop just within the village of Lytton areas yet. The support seems to be focused mostly on the village of Lytton.
I would make the assumption that the EMBC would also be working with the regional district's EOC folks. So it may be a parallel process for sure.
Great, thank you. If there was temporary housing put into place, then people would be in Lytton and could be involved. So, and just another comment on how folks can be involved here. That is all the questions I'm seeing right now. I will give you all just a couple more minutes here in case you think of anything else. Just when I see your hand came back up, I'm just going to ask you to unmute just to make sure that wasn't purposeful. I think it might be a little bit of a glitch.
No, I do have something to say.
Oh, okay, great.
In regards to community planning and getting people together, I think you would be surprised how many people would attend an event. And if it could be spaced off over several days, you wouldn't have to have everyone there at the same time, but you could gather a lot of information on what their priorities are. As a community of 2,500 with a lot of First Nations returning in the next month or so, I would suggest that there's still close to 2,000 of us that use Lytton as a hub that are in the neighborhood. And I know some in Ashcroft and Hope, even in Abbotsford would make the journey. We have lost some citizens for at further distances, but I think that's a relatively small number. So I'm just wanting to put that forward, that I think you would be surprised at the response you get once you organize that event. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. So yeah, and we've actually talked about whether or not we could do remote in a number of locations, if that's where the people were. You know, you mentioned Chilliwack or Kamloops or wherever, the best way to reach people. So I think, you know, those options are all up for grabs. And again, once the COVID restrictions are lifted, certainly the possibility of what we can do is much, much easier now.
If I could, just to clarify, what I'm saying is those people would come for a virtual event, the ones in Abbotsford. I know of maybe a dozen that are outside of a relatively small circle, but I think a majority would show. Anyway, thank you and good luck in your planning.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, I believe the last question tonight will be going to Denise O'Connor. Denise, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi, just around interim housing. So just to clarify the process, you want community members to contact Jack at housing.lytton.ca. So over the last, quite a while now, I've had people ask me how they get their name on a list for interim housing. And of course, at that time, there was no process. So I would like to reach out to those people again and let them know. So what information, what should I be telling them? What do they need to ask Jack? What do they need to tell Jack when they email him?
Denise, can we get back to you with that? I would like to contact Jack in particular. Myself and James would speak to him about what he would be looking for, because the other reason that having Jack Keogh and Yellowhead Community Services on board is they don't only do housing, but they do transportation with BC Transit. They do mental health and wellness programs. So they do a myriad of services in communities. So I believe he would probably want to ask other questions that would help with that those services as well.
Good, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. All right, I believe we got through all of the questions we had today. I don't see any more coming in, and I don't have any on my list from earlier, so that's great. Thank you all so much. I'm going to officially pass it over to Leslie, CAO GRU, to provide some quick closing remarks, and then we'll let you know when the next meeting will be.
Thank you very much, everyone, including all the citizens that asked some really good questions. We may not have had answers the way you would like them or felt that we should, but we will definitely, as Jasmine mentioned, we do look through the questions and then we do a response that gets posted. So tonight I'd like to echo Mayor Polderman's comment about getting moving. Spring is in the air and the recovery team and council have been very busy. It may not seem like it to some folks, but certainly we've done a lot in the background. The municipal recovery part is moving forward with bylaws and policies. So just to remember that all that paperwork was destroyed, and we have been recovering some of it, but not all of it. So there's a process that we do have to go through to reenact bylaws, to establish policies. And then we've been working with the regional rural development, ministry, and we've passed on a job posting for a community and business resiliency specialist instead of an economic development officer. And that's been sent to LFN and NNTC to have a look at. And with the recent funding announcements of 18.4 million, we have been able to move forward in full swing, as you've heard tonight, not just with debris removal and ARC work, but recovery of our municipal administration side as well. I would like to, and I think this is a great relief for everyone, and I'd like to thank each of the following for the good work that they've done. The parliamentary secretaries, thank you for being here for us and listening and working to help support this village of Lytton recover. Provincial staff have been awesome. Our stakeholders that we've been working with have been really phenomenal to work with. Council, again, there's only 3 of them, and there will soon be 2 more, but it's quite a workload to be on. Recovery team, the recovery team has been fantastic. You have a really good, strong team here. The municipal staff, so the public works and the office folks. And then lastly, the citizens of Lytton for working with us and having your voices being heard, we hope, and assisting us in getting on the ground and get going with this recovery process. And thank you, Cook's Gym.
Thank you so much. So just to wrap up, we want to let you know to save the date for our next community meeting, which is going to be on Thursday, April 28th. So Thursday, April 28th. So about a month away from now. Thank you all so much for attending today's community meeting. As CEO Grew just said, we really appreciate all of your questions and all of your feedback. Again, anything that we need to follow up on will be responded to later on in a Q&A or in the newsletter itself. We did get through most of the questions today, so hopefully you won't be waiting on too many answers. If you do have any additional questions, though, that come up after this point, please email communication@lytton.ca at any point in time, and somebody will get back to you. You can also email a member of the village team directly, so we can post that link to find all of their contact information in the chat here now. You can also give us a call. So 778-254-5004 is the number to call. So that concludes tonight's community meeting. Thank you again so much, and have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. I just posted the links to contact information in the chat if you want to pick that up. Yeah.
Thanks, Jasmine. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Councillor Gray. Thanks, everyone. I'll now end the meeting for everyone.